everybody, Fly Guys here, do another tutorial. I asked on my Instagram page if you guys wanted me to do a video of my new striper pattern, and I got overwhelming yes, so I'm going to start with that. It's still in the working phase, so still a lot sort of I'm uncovering, but here we go. So to start off, this is mono. This is size point, I think it's 004. And to start, we're going to tie in some flash here. This is MFC Kreelax, and I really like how it sort of looks. It flows really well. So I just take a clump, decent clump. Again, if you want it to be more flashy or less flashy, I just tie it in. Now you want it to be tied in as long as your hackle is. So we're eventually going to put some hackle on, and if your hackle's not long enough, then you don't want it to be super long. So make sure don't tie it too long. So I just tie that in, make sure it's secure. And underneath, we're going to do a series of deer hair, not hollow ties, just ties, but I want it to get sort of to angle down more as I go forward. So I start from the tip for the tail, and then I work my way down the deer tail so it flares out a little bit. So again, I don't want this to be really bulky, but what I'll do is just grab a little clump, something like this, and I'll match it up. Pull out any rat. So I have a little clump. We're going to spin it over. I want this to be not that long, about halfway down the flash, So what I do is just find out where that is, and I'll come in on the side, and I'll tie it in on the side, and then make sure it doesn't roll. You want it to stay on the bottom. See, I've got a little roll here, so just pinch it down and make sure that stays. Alright, there we go. So you can lock that in. I lock it in working backwards because I don't want to move forward. Alright, so that ain't bad. And I'll cut my tips here, and you can sort of clean it up after you cut your tips off. Alright, so then I come through, just make sure that the belly hair is parted correctly. Alright, that's good. So pull that back. Wrap up these loose fibers. Make sure that it's even. Alright, pretty good. So now I'm going to work back to right where I finished my flash. And on top, I'm going to put some brown hair. Now I want the brown hair, these are really, you want really long fibers for this. These are really long. But these are going to be very sparsely tied. Not a whole lot is going to be in there. So here's what I have. It's just pretty sparse. But I want these to go pretty much, I want them to go much further than the white fibers. Probably about twice as long. I don't want it to reach the tips of my flash, but I want it to be twice as long as the white bucktail. So right there is a good start. I don't like to cinch it down too much because I don't want them to flare up. I want them to kind of lay flat. So there's my little bit. And let's cut those. Alright, tie those in. There we go. And now, what I'm going to do is do basically 2 more of those. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it one more time. So if you have to tie it in on top of previous wraps, that's fine. But I'm just going to do the same thing twice. But there is one tip that I want to say before I kind of speed it up for you guys, and that is I'm gonna tie that in a little bit. That is that the white should be half the distance. So when I go to tie in the next clump of white on the bottom, I'm going to take a clump of white here. It's going to feel short, and I understand that it will feel short, but that's okay. So here's my clump of white. I only want the tips of these fibers to go about half the distance of this belly. So here I measure it up. I'll pull out some really long fibers. I measure it up, and right there is pretty good. So what I'm going to do is cinch that in like so. Make sure it's on top. And it feels short. It really does. When you tie it in, it feels short. And I understand, but trust me, it will make a good looking belly. Alright, so that's not a good cut. So there's my belly. And now I'm going to do the brown again. I'm actually not going to speed this up because there are some tips that I kind of want to tell you guys as I go along. So I'm just going to do another sparse brown section. And I want it to be just as long as the previous one. I want it to be just as long as the previous section. So I'll line it up and try to get it just as long. Right about there is just as long. And now, make sure it's even on top. It's not rolling on the bottom, but make sure that it's even on top. And that looks good. How's that side? Not too shabby. Okay. Remember, you don't want it to be pinched down too hard. But alright. That looks pretty good. How's it look on this side? Not too bad. So that's what we're working with right now. So I'm going to do one more section. I'll probably speed this up. I'm going to do one more section. Same principle. Brown will be the same length. White will be half as long. Okay. So here we go. We're all set. Now things are going to get tight up front towards the head now. So be careful. Every wrap kind of matters now. So what the next step is I'm going to do 3 hackle here. I have some nice brown hackle here. I'm going to do one on the side, one on the top, and then one on the other side. So you're going to want to measure them out. Hopefully, I like the sort of slender, long ones, you know. But you want them to go all the way back to as long as your flash is. So I just measure it in. You want the colorful side to show, so right about there. Okay. So I'll measure them out, and I'll measure all 3 to make sure that they are the same length. Measure them out. There we go. So that way I can tie each one at the same point. There we go. Alright. So here goes my first one. And I'll tie it in right there. Now what I like to do is pull it in a little bit. Here, I'll flip this up. So I pull it into the fibers a little bit. It just helps it stay upright a little better. Alright, so all I do is like 2 or 3 wraps to secure it in. So I'll do one on top. There we go, that looks pretty good. Alright. And then the final third one on the side. The reason I'm not cutting my tips just yet is because in case I want to adjust anything. That way it gives me a little opportunity if I want to adjust something. So here, so I have it cinched down 3 times and I'll just pull it a little bit. And that way it'll keep it a nice, see that nice vertical profile. Alright, so this one needs a little tweaking. There we go. Pretty thrilled with all that. So if I'm thrilled with it, I'll snip the tips here. There we go, and I'll just hold them down and I will tie them in. Now you can start sort of building a small head. Alright. How's this look? Pretty good. That's a pretty good profile. At the end I'll take a big view so you guys can see, but I just want to show you the steps up close so you can see them. So that looks pretty good. So now what I do is I just take a little bit of this. This is Flashaboo. And I don't want this to be overly flashy. So what I do is I take one strip and lay it down on the side here. Just one strip. So I'm going to tie it in right on the side like that. This is not a very thick one. There's like lateral line stuff, you know, I'm sure we all know about the lateral line stuff by now, but it's not very thick, and I like it that way. So tie one in on each side. There you go. Pretty good. Okay, and then the final, they'll be a little longer than your tail, so make sure that you trim them to be the same length as your tail. So now, final step is going along with that green flash. Just the Peacock Hurl is super, super great. So I like it to be really, really long. This is the length of the fly. So I like it to be the entire length, and I lay it in right on top. And usually do 6 or 7. I'll just work back a little bit. 6 or 7 is usually pretty good. Once I get them centered, make sure that they are centered. And so, yeah, you just make sure they're centered, and tie them down, and then you'll start making your head. So I have a little head right now, and that's fine. I don't want to make it any bigger. There's a couple little calamity points going on up ahead, but so that's fine. So I'm just gonna whip finish. I think that's great. Everything looks like I want it to. I'm gonna do 2 because this mono is what you might call slippery. So that's great. Now I'm gonna add in some eyes. And here I'm using living eyes. They're kind of a yellowish. They go really well with that brown. They're kind of already sticky, so I just stick them on there. I have been contemplating with adding a little piece of red hair right here, to sort of fill in this little gap here. Just some red deer tail, which I have kicking around somewhere. So it would just be like, a little bit of red sort of tucked in right underneath there. And that's great, and I'll probably do that with another pattern, but for this one I'm just going to stick to the original idea. So once I've got my eyes in a position where I want them to be, which that looks pretty decent. Is it decent? I always check from the front just to make sure that the heights are the same, and then I always check from the top just to make sure that the placement sort of forward and backwards is the same. So that looks pretty good. So all I do is I take some Solarez and I'll just put a little drop in between them, just to, this is thick, just to get it started, just to keep the eyes in place. I'll do one on top, just kind of let it get in there, and make sure you hold the eyes in place because it will set just how you want it. So that's fine. I'm not doing anything crazy with it. I just want them to set in place. So I'll do a little one on top. And then I'll do a little one on the bottom. And if you have like hackle pliers or something, you can always do that to hold them in place, like kind of have an extra pair of fingers. So here I'll add in some to the bottom. Oh no. And just kind of work it in. So the eyes will still move a little bit, you know, but just kind of work it in there. There we go. So now is your last chance to do anything with them, to sort of move them. So right now they're not actually a pretty good position, but I want them to just move a little bit. And that looks perfect. Ooh, that was a good one. Okay, so there, they should be parallel with your hook shank. So you want them to, sorry guys, they should be parallel to your hook shank. So I'm just gonna hit this really quick. Ooh, that was good. Look at that. That is great. Alright, so now the last part, and then I'm just gonna sort of fast forward, is I want this material back here to stay flat and down. So you see how it puffs up right now? So to help that, I'm gonna build this head up with UV gel. I'm gonna build it up, and I'm gonna hold the fibers down like this when I make the head. I don't want these bottom ones to get puffed down, but I want the top ones. So as I build it, again, go slow. The biggest problem people have is building too much of a head at one time. So I'm going to try to fill in some cracks here. That's pretty decent. Make sure you have some sort of bodkin to help you out, help you fill in these cracks. Whoopsies. Don't do that. So all I'm doing is just kind of going through and pushing it down in, just to help it kind of get into the fibers. And when I have it like I want it, I'm just going to hold them down. Just hold it like that and hit it with the light. Which my light does not seem to be as bright as it normally is right now. Well, we'll find out how it goes. And so I hold it down, and there, it will help it stay down much, much more. So now it has a sleeker sort of profile. And when it gets wet, it'll really stay sleek. So I'm going to do this maybe a few more times. So I'm going to speed it up for you as I build this head. I'm just going to build up a typical head, nothing special. And I'm going to speed it up, and then I'll show you guys, I'll give you sort of a 360 view once it is all, ooh, there we go. That's better. Once it's all done, I'll give you a 360 view of it. Alright, so I'm going to speed this up while I build the rest of this head. Alright, so I am pretty much done. There's my top casing. So like I see a few holes in the top. instead of using the thick stuff, what I'll do is I'll take a really precise applicator, and this is thin, and I'll just go in and sort of find little holes that could be filled in, and I will fill them in with this applicator. Just kind of makes it a little more well-rounded look. Again, it's not really a big deal or anything, but so I'll go in and I'll just sort of fill in holes and fill in gaps here and there with this thin applicator. Just gives me a little more, come on, little better look. And once I have done that, that is it. That is going to be the fly. And I like to keep them in. I like to keep them in the sun, especially thicker heads that I build up like this. I like to keep them in the sun for about a day. I usually keep them in there for a day. I mean, a week or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then this is it. Just it really hardens that UV gel. So here's our fly, and it's a really great Pollock imitation. I think I've never used this fly, so there it is. There's this fly. I've never used it before, but I imagine that it's going to swim very well. It's got a really good shake to it. It's got a good profile, and I think that this will do very, very well for stripers. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Check us out on Maine Fly Guys on Instagram, or subscribe to our channel. And thanks for watching.